game warden saw tracks on the disturbed grave, he couldn't have imagined it would become the beginning of the strangest investigation of his life. Residents of a small Altai village were frightened. Something or someone regularly came to the cemetery, leaving mysterious traces behind. But why did this creature's attention focus on only one grave? The more the hunter delved into this case, the more questions he had. He had no idea that solving this mystery would soon shock all the local residents. In the Altai region, in one of the small villages, locals began noticing frightening things. Someone was desecrating graves in the cemetery, leaving behind mounds of earth and paw prints resembling those of wolves or dogs. More precisely, only one grave was dug up, but people were sure that sooner or later, this would spread to other plots. This couldn't be left alone, and the case gained public attention. To investigate, the management of the Altai hunting grounds sent a game warden to the village. This experienced hunter tracker immediately determined that the tracks left on the grave belonged to a wolf. The mystery for the warden was different. Why was the predator digging up this particular grave? Yes, local residents were sure it would eventually get to others, but for some reason, the hunter didn't think so. He focused all his attention on why the wolf was interested in this particular 10-year-old burial. The inscription on the plaque had worn off over time, and it wasn't possible to know whose grave it was yet. The warden set up an ambush, but it led to nothing. The wolf didn't come to the cemetery that night at all, but the man wasn't going to give up. Even though it was winter, he settled behind a fallen tree, deciding he would wait as long as necessary. The beast appeared on the third day. It immediately headed to that very burial site and began digging up the earth. After doing this, the predator raised its head to the sky and howled long and mournfully, making the warden feel uneasy. The circumstances were becoming increasingly eerie. When the hunter caught the wolf's profile in his optical sight's crosshairs, he saw tears on the animal's face. The man couldn't shoot. What was happening here? No one could answer this question yet. One thing was clear. Everything was very confusing, not at all as simple as it might have seemed at first. Could anyone have assumed that this animal, which instilled so much fear in the local residents, would have tears in its eyes? And the question of why the beast invariably came to the same place still didn't give the man peace. Soon the wolf left the cemetery and dissolved into the forest thicket. Then the tracker decided to approach this issue from a different angle. He had to figure everything out at all costs. The next day, the warden went to the local old-timers to try to find out who was buried in that very plot. It turned out to be the grave of an escaped prisoner, the forester's brother. He had escaped from prison 10 years ago. Finding himself in his native land, the criminal came to his brother's house to eat, change clothes, and spend the night. The forester lived alone, and for the repeat offender, this circumstance was very convenient. However, the forester wasn't happy to see the guest. By the way, the brothers looked very similar, and almost no one could tell them apart. When they met, the men had a big argument, resulting in the escaped prisoner's death. The forester was even given a commendation and awarded a bonus at that time. But let's return to the present time. So, our hero tracker decided to meet with the forester who had neutralized his criminal brother, but the meeting didn't take place. The forester's neighbor said that immediately after the funeral, he moved to the city and now lives there. Then the warden turned to the local police officer to make an inquiry about the departed man's place of residence to establish his identity. A couple of days later, a response came saying that the conducted fingerprint examination showed it was the very same escaped prisoner, and he had been impersonating his brother. Officially, the repeat offender was listed as dead. In reality, that night, he had killed the forester, and it wasn't difficult for him to pass himself off as his brother since they looked so much alike. But now that the situation had been clarified, the criminal was facing trial and a new sentence. That's how our hero game warden managed to preserve the forester's honest name while not taking the wolf's life. Since then, the predator stopped coming to the cemetery and digging up the grave. Now no one had any doubt. Through its actions, the beast was trying to convey the truth to people, to show what had really happened back then in the past. Perhaps the forester had once helped this animal, and it was for this reason that the predator was trying to restore justice. But we can only speculate. Who knows what motivated the wolf to behave in such a way? However, the version that it was doing all this for help once rendered to it, although amazing, is quite plausible. After all, everyone knows that animals understand perfectly well who treats them well and see the difference between good and evil. Moreover, they know how to show gratitude for kindness, and it seems that this is exactly what the wolf from our extraordinary story was doing. See you soon.